professor of art history, Hunter College of the City University of New York. Mary B. Moore states, "Probably no animal has been more admired for its sheer beauty and graceful movement than the horse, and probably no animal has inspired more representations in art, both ancient and modern. The mystique of the horse has captivated mankind for centuries, reaching far back into antiquity, in fact, into prehistory." One more quote I like is, "The history of civilization is carried on the back of the horse." I left riding school in the early 1970s and have been training horses and riders ever since. I used what was essentially a dressage background to work with hunters and equitation, show jumpers, three-day eventing, and now for the last decade, dressage by itself. As a result, I've spent most of my time with people deeply interested in being with horses. We talk about training, care, and showing. We relate past experiences, what crazy things can go wrong, past successes and difficulties, how our bodies take so much more maintenance than the young riders around us. We tell stories about how parts of normal life are excluded for us because of the time and money commitment involved in maintaining the obsessive behavior of lifelong care and training of horses. A couple of us were showing dressage at the World Equestrian Center in Ocala, Florida 2 winters ago. It's a beautiful place where the management does everything to perfection, in spite of the large number of horses spending the winter there competing. We were looking around. The dressage show was a couple of hundred horses. The hunters and jumpers were closer to 1,000 in number, with all the attending humanity. Kids, generally teenage girls, and their mothers and some fathers. Trainers, even a decent number in my age group. Professional riders, grooms, farriers, braiders, on and on. I thought, this is our tribe. Here in the winter, we have tribal gatherings where it is warm to show our horses. Then we all spread out for the summer up the coasts and Midwest, throughout the country, and honestly throughout the world. This, of course, is just the small segment of the horse world that I'm familiar with. There are other tribes with the same commitment to the endless pursuit of being with horses. All are focused on improving skills which require endless practice, and the resulting communion with the horses, as well as with each other. Other tribes focusing on driving, reining, cutting, barrel racing. There are people who don't compete and ride for pleasure or just work on the perfection of skills. Horses and riders have fox hunted and raced and played polo for centuries. Doesn't matter. Just another tribe involved in yearly rituals where we come together and move apart. I've always been interested in history. How did things get to be the way they are? And I love looking at images that represent a certain time on the continuum that is history. Being a person responsible for training horses and riders, I would always go back in the past to obtain information. What techniques have been successful and logical for dealing with this problem or that? Our tribes have been writing about training for millennia, the first writing book being written around 400 BC by the Greek general Xenophon. It's not possible to discover and discuss all the horse tribes throughout our long history of living in the culture of the horse, but I hope to expand out from my little microcosm and explore other tribes associated with horses throughout time. A couple of years ago, I had fallen and broken a bunch of ribs, and my physical activity was quite limited for a period of time. I was sitting at the computer looking for historical antecedents who were training horses in the past. The French National Library has digitized centuries of writing books that one can see in the original. I can't read or speak French, but I can look at the engravings, drawings, and pictures that illustrate horsemanship history. A favorite that I found was a book by Louis Valet called Le Chic à Cheval, History Pittoresque de l'Equitation. So I assumed a pictorial history of equitation, right up my alley because I could look at the pictures even if I couldn't read the text. The book is quite thorough with hundreds of engravings depicting saddles, stirrups, bits, and spurs throughout the history of riding from Greece and Rome to the end of the 19th century when the book was published. I find the images so entertaining, particularly the expressions on all the horses' faces. As we look at the images, I'll try to provide some of Valet's comments about the people and time that he is portraying. It's 2024, and using computer translation, I can now easily read the text of the book, along with enjoying the pictures. In this series of videos, I hope to do in 2024 what Valet did in 1890, a pictorial history of equitation. The history of our relationship with horses is so vast, our lives are so intertwined, I can only zoom in and out of periods and places, but I'll try to find images that will help enlighten modern equestrians to our history, our tribes that went before. Hopefully, even if the text is uninteresting, you can look at the pictures and find them helpful for connecting to your equestrian past. The book was written in the 1890s, so Valet lived in a world that was not completely mechanized. In fact, he was living right on the cusp of change from horsepower to the world we live in today. I don't know where Valet lived, but for example, here are images of Paris in the 1890s when his book was published. Camille Pissarro created this painting of Boulevard Montmartre in 1897, and the scene was pretty dominated by the four-legged horsepower. Likewise, in the photos of Paris around 1890, and this view of the Champs des Élysées but a couple of years later, the autos are starting to show up with the horse traffic, and we get a humorous depiction of the interaction before takeover. This car is even out in the country by 1897. In Europe, in 1886, the first modern car, a practical, marketable automobile for everyday use, was introduced by Carl Benz. In 1890, Gottlieb Daimler and Wilhelm Maybach formed Daimler Motor und Gesellschaft, known for its Mercedes-Benz brand. Here is a Mercedes made by Maybach and named for his daughter from 1901. Here the German leader Kaiser Wilhelm is out in his Mercedes in 1906. The world was changing, but animal power was still dominant. Horses were still used in the military, transportation, and farming, but these were the last years before gasoline engines would begin to dominate those fields, and horses' use would become what it is today, leisure pursuits.